My dad and stepmom tried to force me out of my own house for my pregnant stepsister. When I refused, they changed the locks. I'm 28, male, and I'm honestly still trying to wrap my head around what just happened. I live in the house my mom left me when she passed 5 years ago. It's nothing huge, just a modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. My mom bought it with her hard-earned savings, and she made sure I knew it would be mine when she was gone. She was always the only stable person in my life, especially after my dad remarried, well, her. My dad, he's not bad, just neglectful. He wasn't really around much after the divorce, and when he was, it was always about him and his new wife. The only time he seemed to care was when something benefited them. And when I say them, I mean my stepmom and her daughter, S. S is my stepsister, 25 and pregnant. That in itself isn't the issue. I've got nothing against her for being pregnant, but the entitlement that radiates off her is unreal. She's the type that always expects life to hand her things on a silver platter, because frankly, that's what my dad and stepmom have done since day one. They spoil her rotten. If she wants something, she gets it. And now they've got their eyes set on my house. It all started a couple of months ago when S's boyfriend left her. I wasn't surprised. The guy always seemed checked out. But of course, in her eyes, she's the victim. I heard about the breakup from my dad, who said S was devastated and needed family support. My dad and stepmom were all over it, catering to her every need, taking her in, cooking her meals, and comforting her. That's fine. I get it. She's family and she's having a rough time. But then one day, my dad called me over for a chat, which, in my experience, never ends well. I showed up, expecting to hear something about helping out or maybe giving S a bit of cash. What I didn't expect was what came next. "We've been thinking," my dad started, sitting at the head of the kitchen table, his wife beside him, looking smug as always. "S needs stability right now, and it's getting a bit cramped at our place with the baby on the way." I didn't like where this was going. "Okay," I said slowly, eyeing the two of them. Stepmom piped up, her voice as sweet as artificial sugar. "We were thinking that, since you've got this big house all to yourself, it would make sense for S to move in. You could stay somewhere smaller. Maybe an apartment?" I blinked. I thought they were joking. "Wait, what?" My dad nodded like it was the most logical thing in the world. "It's not like you need all that space. You're single, no kids. It'd be easier for you to move, and S could use the extra room for the baby. We've already looked into some places for you, just in case you're interested." Just like that, no build-up, no negotiation. They were asking me to leave my own house, the house my mom left me, so that S could live there rent-free because her boyfriend bailed on her. I sat there for a moment, stunned. "You can't be serious," I finally said, my voice shaking with disbelief. My stepmom's smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. "It's just a suggestion, honey. We thought you'd want to help family out in their time of need." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "You want me to move out of my house so S can live there with her baby? What happens when she finds another guy or decides she doesn't like it? You expect me to just give up everything?" "We're not saying give up," my dad said quickly. "Just think about the baby. It's the right thing to do." "Right, the baby. The one that's not even born yet. The one that's suddenly more important than the fact that this house is mine. What about my life? My job? I've been building my life here. I've made this place my own. You're asking me to just throw that away?" S walked in at that moment, wearing that same smug expression I've grown to despise. She looked at me, then at her mom and my dad, and I knew. She was in on this from the start. "It's not like you can't afford to move," she said, crossing her arms over her growing belly. "You've got savings, right?" I shot her a look that could have melted steel. "What's that got to do with anything? This is my house, not yours, not Dad's, mine." S huffed, and for a moment I saw the mask slip. "Well, don't be so selfish. You don't have a family to think about." "I do." "Selfish. Me. The one who's being asked to give up his home." I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "Just because I don't have kids doesn't mean my life doesn't matter. At that point, things escalated. My stepmom jumped in, accusing me of being heartless, saying that family helps family and that my mom would be disappointed in me. That hit a nerve and I snapped. "Don't you dare bring my mom into this," I growled, standing up from the table so fast that my chair nearly toppled over. "She left this house to me because she knew you'd pull some crap like this. You think I didn't notice how you and Dad treated her? How you slowly edged her out of my life until she was gone? You have no right to talk about her." Silence. I could see my dad's face flushing, but he didn't say anything. He never did when things got uncomfortable. He let my stepmom handle it, like always. "She's just trying to help," my dad finally said, his voice weak. "Help?" I scoffed. "You call this helping? Trying to guilt me into giving up my house because your precious daughter screwed up her life? That's not helping, Dad. That's manipulation." S shot back with, "It's not manipulation. You're being dramatic. I need this more than you do. You'll find another place and you'll be fine." I couldn't believe the audacity. "You're not getting this house," I said firmly, turning to leave. "This conversation is over." But it wasn't. Not by a long shot. Over the next few weeks, the pressure mounted. My dad and stepmom kept calling, showing up at the house unannounced, always with some new angle to convince me. Seven started playing the victim card harder, saying she was stressed out and needed a stable environment for the baby. They even had the nerve to show me listings for apartments nearby, just in case I changed my mind. I didn't. Then came the real kicker. One afternoon, I came home from work and the locks on my front door had been changed. I stood there, staring at my own door, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. I tried my key again. Nothing. At first, I thought I was losing it, but then I noticed a note stuck to the door. "We've changed the locks for S's safety. Please contact us to discuss this." That's when I lost it. I called my dad, furious, demanding to know what the hell was going on. He tried to play it off like they were doing me a favor, saying it was temporary, just until we worked something out. I wasn't having any of it. I threatened to call the cops, and that's when my dad's tone changed. He started begging me not to, saying that it would look bad, that we could resolve this as a family. But I wasn't backing down this time. I told him flat out that if the locks weren't changed back by the end of the day, I was filing a police report for trespassing. After that, things moved quickly. The locks were changed back, but the damage was done. I couldn't trust them anymore. I started looking into legal options to make sure this wouldn't happen again. That's when my lawyer told me something I wasn't expecting. During our conversation, I mentioned that I felt like they were going to try and take the house from me, and he warned me that my father had already inquired about contesting my mom's will months ago. He hadn't actually filed anything yet, but he'd spoken to a lawyer about trying to get the house declared as family property instead of my inheritance. I was furious. This whole time, they'd been planning it. They thought they could twist the law and bully me into giving up my home, but my lawyer assured me that my mom's will was airtight. They didn't have a leg to stand on. I confronted my dad the next day. "So you've been planning to take my house from me all along?" I asked, my voice cold as ice. His face paled, but he didn't deny it. "I didn't want it to come to that," he muttered. "But she's in a tough spot. She needs the house more than you do. It's for the baby." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You were going to take your own son to court over something, Mom? Left to me and her will? Just so your stepdaughter could have an easy life?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. That was the worst part. My own father couldn't even look me in the face after betraying me like this. "I didn't want it to go that far," he said quietly. "But you weren't being reasonable. S's family too. You've got to understand. I just wanted to make sure she and the baby were taken care of. By taking everything from me," I snapped, feeling the anger bubbling up again. "You don't get to decide what's reasonable. You try to take the one thing my mom left me, and you expect me to just roll over because S messed up? You've been neglecting me for years, and now this? You're unbelievable." "Look, I know it's not fair," he said, finally looking up, but there was no remorse in his eyes, just frustration. "But I thought you'd be able to find another place. I thought maybe in time you'd understand." "I'll never understand," I shot back, "and I'll never forgive you for this." He opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't interested in hearing any more of his excuses. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. That was it. The last shred of whatever father-son relationship we had left was gone. In the weeks that followed, I took extra precautions to make sure they couldn't try anything else. My lawyer helped me lock everything down. My house, my finances, everything. I made sure the house title was solidly in my name with no loopholes or gaps for them to exploit. I even looked into getting a restraining order, but my lawyer advised against it unless they escalated further. And while I hoped that would be the end of it, I knew better. S didn't give up easily. She showed up at my place one day, acting like nothing had happened, as if we hadn't just been through months of manipulation and deceit. She stood there on my doorstep, belly out, looking at me like I was the villain in her story. "I really don't get why you're being so difficult," she said, her voice laced with frustration. "I thought family was supposed to stick together." I stared at her, utterly speechless. "Difficult? I'm being difficult? You tried to steal my house, and you're acting like I'm the one in the wrong?" S rolled her eyes. "Steal is a strong word. It's not like you can't afford to move, and I actually need the space, for the baby." "There it is again," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "Everything's about you and that baby. Do you even hear yourself? Do you realize how entitled you sound?" Her face tightened, and I could tell she wasn't used to people calling her out. "Entitled? Are you serious? I'm about to be a single mom, and all I'm asking for is a little help. You're acting like this is some huge injustice when all I'm asking for is a roof over my head." "I'm not obligated to give you anything," I said, my voice firm. "Especially not my home. You got yourself into this situation, and it's not my responsibility to bail you out." S crossed her arms over her chest, glaring at me. "You're going to regret this. Dad already thinks you're being heartless. You're pushing everyone away for a stupid house." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't get it, do you? It's not just a house. It's everything I have left of my mom. She made sure I'd have this place, and you and your mom are trying to take that away from me because you can't handle the fact that life didn't go the way you planned. Well, tough luck, S. I'm not going anywhere." She stared at me for a long moment, her face twisted with anger and disbelief. "Fine," she finally spat. "But when you're all alone and you don't have anyone left, don't say I didn't warn you." I closed the door in her face before she could say anything else. That was the last time I spoke to her. After that, things finally calmed down. My dad and stepmom must have realized they weren't getting anywhere with me because they stopped calling, stopped showing up unannounced. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that S eventually moved in with a new boyfriend, a guy with money, apparently. I guess her desperate need for my house wasn't as critical as she made it out to be. And you know what? I don't regret a thing. My dad and stepmom haven't spoken to me since. S moved on with her life, and I've done the same. I still live in the house, and every time I walk through the front door, I feel a sense of peace, knowing I stood my ground. I kept what was mine, what my mom wanted me to have, and no amount of manipulation or guilt-tripping could take that away from me. Yeah, it hurts that my dad chose them over me. It hurts that he thought it was okay to try and steal from his own son to help his stepdaughter. But I've learned something through all this. Sometimes you have to cut people out of your life to protect yourself, even if they're family. Blood doesn't entitle anyone to anything, and you don't owe anyone just because they share your DNA. So, if you're ever in a situation where someone, family or not, trying to take advantage of you, remember this. You don't have to give in. You don't owe anyone your peace, your home, or your life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.